Hey,
Hi.
Tyler, Keith, plugged on. We're going to rank all the Slayer albums. We're ranking all 11 albums. We're not counting Undisputed Attitude. That's mostly a covers album. Sorry, not going to talk about that one. So we're talking about all 11 studio albums that Slayer has. Slayer's a pretty legendary band in metal, you know, being one of the big four of the 80s thrash scene. And we love Slayer, for sure. I'll be the first to admit that out of the big four, Slayer is by far my least favorite. But
oh yeah, I mean I think that's
cool stuff.
Yeah, their stuff's good. It's just I'm just trying to pulling up the one album we don't have.
So we did get a bunch of comments on our Iced Earth ranking of like some rankings that you want to see. We are going to take a lot of them into consideration and do them over the next few months, hopefully. So yeah, without further ado, number 11, we have Diabolus and Musica from 1998. Sounds just really on the boring side.
A little bit.
It's, you know, it's not awful. I think it does get a lot of shit, but the thing is that it just has a really weird feeling of it, you know, for being a Slayer album, and then also it's just none of the songs are really memorable at all and stand out as Slayer classics or go-to songs to me. It's just such a slog to get through. It's overly long, and it's just not an exciting album at all.
It sounds almost nu metal.
Yeah.
In spots, which is really weird.
Yeah, I agree. Number 10, Repentless, the latest album.
This album kind of falls into the same patterns that Diabolus and Musica. There's okay spots, but it's just, I don't know if it had to do with losing Jeff Hanneman as a writer or what, but it just, a lot of these songs just feel weird. Like the only standout track to me is Repentless, the title track. Like and some, like there are some okay songs, like Implode's okay, but then like When the Stillness Comes, it's like still I think one of the worst Slayer songs ever written. Actually no, it's the worst Slayer song ever written. It's just not a good song, and it's just there's nothing that really stands out. That's really this whole album's problem. Is that and on the surface, this album should be great. I mean, Paul Bostov's back, who's like a great substitute. Dave Lombardo, and then you have Gary Holt, who's great in Exodus, but it just didn't come together all that well on this one necessarily.
No, it kind of to me feels a little bit of we got to put an album out to keep touring and make money, sort of thing. Like it's not exciting at all. Number 9, Christ Illusion from 2006, Parental Advisory, Strong Language.
It just hit me that this album is over 10 years old now.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like I was listening to it earlier. I'm like, oh my god.
I think over the next few albums, any of these can kind of go anywhere. This is kind of where it worked out when we both came up with our list and everything. And I don't think Christ Illusion is a bad album at all. It's got some pretty cool songs on it. It almost feels, in terms of sound, like a God Hates Us All Part 2. But there's some fucking cool songs on here. Catalyst is cool. Skeleton Christ. Eyes of the Insane has a lot of just heavy, fat fucking guitars to it with a really awesome chorus. Jihad's probably one of the heaviest Slayer songs they've ever written. I think that is a super underrated Slayer song. Catatonic is really fun to listen to. There's some good thrashiness here. It just doesn't hit the high marks of some of their other albums to me. But there's some solid stuff.
Jihad's like my favorite Slayer song ever written. That song is incredible, especially the middle section.
It is.
Middle section, I lose it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And Tom Araya, like, the quickness of his vocals during the verses and everything, I'm like, holy shit, it's just crazy. Number 8, their debut album, Show No Mercy.
This album's different just because Slayer's always had like a very, even within thrash, a very unique sound. It's very like adrenaline-driven, just speed fest. And Show No Mercy it really isn't that. It's more of like almost like a traditional thrash metal album in a lot of ways. But there's a lot of good stuff on this album. Black Magic is a great song. I love Black Magic. Die by the Sword, The Antichrist are both also really good songs. The title track, Show No Mercy, I like it, and it's a lot more in a melodic, but like of a Slayer album, but like in a different way than like South of Heaven is.
Mhm.
Like South of Heaven's very much just like an answer to Rain and Blood, whereas this is just like here's what's around, and this is what we're gonna do. And yeah, this album is a pretty good album. I do enjoy this album a good bit.
Yeah,
So
definitely. And look at this dude on the back. How fucking metal is
it's
that?
Baphomet. It's Satan.
Yeah. Number 7, Divine Intervention from 1994. To be honest with you, I think this is probably the most underrated Slayer album. They don't play a lot off of this album at all, but there are some cool songs on here. Like the title track's cool. I love Killing Fields. Ditto Head is cool. SS3 is fun. There's a nice thrashiness to this album, and it has a good sound to it. It continues that sound from Seasons into the Abyss, and that's awesome. It definitely does, like, the highs on this album don't hit the highs of some other songs, but I think as a whole it's a pretty consistent album, and it's fun. It's just nobody really talks about Divine Intervention,
Which sucks, because like I'd listened to this album really from the hardcore the first time for like listening to this, and I'm like, wow, why have I not listened to this album before?
Yeah,
I like my whole issue, but
yeah, definitely. Number 6, World Pain and Blood.
no sanctuary. Yeah, this is their album from
2009.
2009. Wow, good.
Yeah.
And that's another one. That's another oldie.
We were in high school when this album came out.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
This is like, in some ways, a return to the more traditional thrash metal sound of Slayer, because like God Hates Us All and Christ Evolution are a lot groovier and a little bit more almost experimentative in some ways. And whereas like songs like Hate Worldwide, Psychopathy Red, and the title track are just straight up thrash fest. The title track is probably my favorite song from the album, just because I like the build up, and then my favorite section is like the whole middle section, like when the solos start. Like normally I'm not a big fan of Slayer solos for the most part, but like the chaoticness of the solo in this song, it works for like the theme and whatnot. And I just think that this was like the first new Slayer album that I latched onto, and I like a lot of stuff, like again, Public Display of Dismemberment's a cool song. Snuff, I really like Snuff actually. Snuff's a great song, and Beauty Through Order.
Yeah.
That song's not one that gets talked about a lot, but I do like that song a good bit.
Yeah, Psychopathy Red is a fucking rager, and then Playing with Dolls is kind of interesting too.
Yeah,
There's some good stuff on here, for sure. Number 5, Hell Awaits. This is their second album, 1985. This album is really good. Now, to me, Show No Mercy and Hell Awaits are kind of similar, but Hell Awaits takes the sound, and it sounds a little bit better. The songs are a lot more interesting. The riffs are way cooler, and it's just way more fucking evil. It's way more Slayer, and Slayer as you know them, This is kind of, to me, where it started a little bit, just because this album just, especially with the title track, which opens the album, it has such an evil fucking sound to it. And then you move into songs like Necrophiliac is a fucking really great underrated Slayer song that has awesome riffs. At Dawn They Sleep is awesome. And these songs are pretty lengthy too for Slayer, and I just love it. I love the overall sound and feeling of this album. I think it's a strong album. It's a little bit, it's straight up fucking thrash and solos, and they definitely shift that a little bit with their next album that everybody knows. But yeah, I think Hell Awaits it's a good album.
It is. It's not an album I go back to a lot, but when I do, I'm like, why don't I listen to this album? Especially the title track. I really like the title track. The title track's, I think, the best track from Hell Awaits.
Yeah, and I love Tom Araya's voice on this album too. I think it's fantastic. Before God Hates Us All, from 2001. Yeah, this album came out on 9/11, 2001.
Yeah.
Which, how kind of ironic and not cool that is, but of course, they weren't trying that, but yeah, God Hates Us All is an interesting album.
I like it. This album's very groovy. Like, even with, like, the Disciple, which is, the title track in Highways. That song goes from, like, being thrashy to, like the middle section, which is very heavy and weird, where Tom Araya is just screaming at the top of his lungs. God Sends Death is a great song. Exile is a cool song. Probably my favorite song is Bloodline. I really do like Bloodline. It's like, especially with just the heavy chorus and whatnot. It's still like, it's weird because that song is very Slayer, but not in a way that Slayer has really done it before that. Like, just this kind of sort of thrashy, but it's also super, super chuggy, beefy at the same time. I just like the feel of this album. And it's like, this is like the only Paul Bostov, like, drumming wise, because like that one, like, this stands out. Like, some of the drumming in this album's like, it's nuts. It gives Dave Lombardo a run for his money in a couple spots, especially during Disciple and Bloodline. But like, yeah, I fucking love this album.
Yeah, there's two things I kind of think when I think of Slayer. It's one, kind of an evil sound and atmosphere to him, and I think like Hell Awaits and Rain and Blood kind of embody that. And then I think of kind of screaming sort of in a weird, like, Tom Araya sort of way. To me, listening to this album, I'm like, how the fuck did he not blow his voice out? He's just putting so much into this album. He sounds fantastic on it in terms of just kind of yelling at the top of his lungs and, being fucking in your face. It's crazy. I love this album because Slayer's always kind of had the same sort of sound. Like, the first two albums sound similar, and then I feel the next 4 or 5 sound pretty similar. And I'm not saying that sounds awful, but to me, with this album, especially after Diabolus and Musica, which kind of sucks, they came out and it's just like, bam! It's like, it's still a Slayer sound, but it's so much more fat and fucking in your face and heavy. I mean, just listen to Disciple. It's like one of the fucking heaviest songs out there, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Cool. Number 3, South of Heaven. Just like this video keeps going on and on. South of Heaven. South of Heaven is a cool album, and a lot of people jump on this album because it's not thrashy, because they went fucking as fast as you possibly can with Rain and Blood. Where do you go from there? You kind of have to slow it down and get more melodic and cool, and South of Heaven does that. And I think, the title track's one of the best songs that they've ever written. I love that song, but there are some fucking incredible songs on here. Like, Behind the Crooked Cross is awesome. Mandatory Suicide's a heavy song. Ghost of War is a nice thrashy song. Dissident Aggressor's awesome. There's so many fantastic songs on here, and I love the sound and production of this album. I love the atmosphere that it has. It is awesome, and to me, these next 3 albums are just they're classics, and they're just classic metal albums, period. And South of Heaven's fantastic.
Yeah, like, this is like the only, besides Undisputed Attitude, this is like the only album that has like a cover song on it, which is Dissident Aggressor, and it's a completely different feel than the Priest version.
Yeah, that's why I like it so much. It's just got a good Slayer sound to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a fantastic song. Ghost of War is one of my favorite Slayer songs. Love that song. Number 2, which, hey, a lot of people are probably going to look at us and go, why is this not number 1? It should be number 1, but whatever, man.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Rain and Blood, Slayer. Probably the most classic Slayer album. One of the most important albums, I feel, in metal. Importance is great, but especially compared to number 1, I think, in terms of songwriting. Like, number 1 is better, but this album, if you just want straight up fucking Slayer as fast as you can, as evil as possible, this is the album.
I love the fact that one of the influences behind this album was Kerry King was like, where that they were like, hey, you can flip it back, with tapes. You can flip the tape over and listen to the album again. Mm-hmm. And I like it because this album's only like 28 minutes long.
Yeah.
And there's still like 11 songs on the album, which is awesome. Like I think the Angel of Death is the longest song in like 4.5 minutes, and it's like Christ. But yeah, this has some of the most classic Slayer songs ever. I mean, of course, Raining Blood is the most well-known Slayer song. There's not really any doubt about that. And then, but also like how Postmortem kind of goes into that. Postmortem's a great song with its own kind of style. Probably another one of my personal favorite Slayer songs is Angel of Death. That song is just the most evil and like thrashy thing, and I my favorite part is the middle section and then the riffage, especially once the vocals come back in and the riff underneath it is like I think that might be the greatest thrash riff ever written.
Yeah.
That riff that's underneath the vocals when they're singing about that, and there's just a lot of that. You know, Jesus Saves is a cool song. Necrophobia, Altar of Sacrifice. There's just a lot of these pure great thrash songs that just this is the pinnacle of thrash in terms of speed. Like this, and no album. I don't even think any album will ever beat this album in terms of that aspect. This is probably one of the most, if not the most important thrash album ever. One of the most, especially going on to the more extreme styles of metal. This is probably the most, in that sense, the most influential album ever.
Yeah, and you listen to this album, then you listen to some early death metal albums, and you can absolutely hear the influence from Rain and Blood. You know, it's definitely a super important album and one of Slayer's best. You know, number one, we have Seasons in the Abyss, 1990. We put this in number one because you have Rain and Blood, which kind of perfected the thrash and the speed. You have South of Heaven, which slowed it down and brought in some great atmosphere to it. To me, this album takes the two and smashes them together in an awesome way. It's a lot thrashier than South of Heaven, but it's got a lot more, you know, melodic sort of stuff than Rain and Blood, you know. But to me, it's just song after song after song. This album just kicks you square in the fucking mouth. And War Ensemble is one of the best pure thrash songs that Slayer has ever written. Spirit in Black Screen, Expendable Youth. But I think one of my favorite songs, maybe my favorite Slayer song, I don't know, just because of the creepy tone to it, is Dead Skin Mask. That song is fucking creepy as shit. And the riffs in that song are amazing from start to finish, but it's the ending that always gets me with all the different voices and everything during the chorus. It's just so good. But, you know, Skeletons of Society, Temptation is awesome, but the title track is amazing. And the title track is great in terms of riffs and choruses and all that stuff, but it's the fucking solo that just destroys on this song. And they never play it live, ever, and it pisses me off because the solo is so well written. And I'm not the biggest fan of Slayer solos either. They never stick in my head. They never stand out as something that I think is great. But Season of the Abyss, they actually wrote something, and it's awesome. I just wish they would play it live a little bit more. I love this album. This is always the album that when I want to listen to Slayer, I put on the most all the time.
I just like this album mostly because, again, as you said, this is basically the melodic and thrashy Slayer kind of coming together, and it's very much apparent in all the songs. You have Expendable Youth, which is a very groovy, cool kind of song. The same kind of thing with Skeletons of Society. And there's just weird things. Like the fact that there's two vocal tracks in Temptation that don't match up, at all. That's really cool. And it's how do you come up with that? Which apparently was an accident. But still, that's super cool. Again, Dead Skin Mask is another great song. I just love the riff that plays underneath the solos. That's oh god. And then the main riff was just kind of how almost, it's not bouncy, because that's not the right kind of word, but it's just kind of is constantly moving and doing stuff is great. And then, to me, Seasons in the Abyss is, the whole song's great, but I love the intro. The intro is good god, it just kind of goes everywhere, and it's really cool. So, yeah, that's why. That this is just, I feel like this is everything that Slayer is wrapped up into one album, and that's what makes it great.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, that's it. That's all 11 Slayer albums put in the only order that matters. Don't listen to anybody else, just listen to us. Let us know what you think this seems